Good morning from Riverton. Hopefully y'all can hear me. By the time this is over with, I'll be like, anyway, just wanted to jump in here on our usual Thursday thing here. Hope everybody is doing okay. Hopefully everybody is safe. Everybody's fighting off those COVIDs. Got to fight off the COVIDs, the nasty little COVIDs. And, stations, I hope you're doing everything you can to inform the public and make sure that everybody knows what they should be doing. Unfortunately, not everybody's heeding that advice out there in the world. And, but, we can only do what we can do. And I know a lot of you out there are dealing with many issues that are directly related, such as being able to get programming on the air, remote access situations, and such. And let's not forget the big one, which is the issues around underwriting and the lack of it, and the fact that a lot of businesses that maybe underwriting on stations are currently not considered essential. So, we're doing the best we can out here. We've come out with quite a bit of educational stuff and doing everything that we can. We've been helping out some stations, giving them some price breaks and things like that in the past on things, and doing what we can to get all of us through this situation. So still, if you need anything done, we're here, and honestly, we could use the work. We are kind of in a busy mode right now, only because right now we are in a processing delay because of the virus, both from a professional standpoint with operations at REC, but that has kind of died down now that we've got a lot of information out there and such. And right now it's just a lot of question answering and stuff like that. We've also got family related issues, personal issues. And remember, I am just one person, so I can only be stretched so far. And with this, certain things, have to be done a certain way right now. And so that might mean that I'm going to have to that I'm going to have to go into town. And usually I'm the only one that goes into town. So, I'm left taking care of a lot of things in town. Unfortunately, Eva is one of those, I guess you could call them higher risk folks, where it comes to the corona, the immunity to the virus. So so we've got that going on. And then, of course, the FCC decided to drop the draft report and order right in the middle of all this, and we're going to be talking more about that, and we'll be talking about some ideas that I have on this that we've already talked to the Media Bureau about, and mainly it's in response to the whole COVID, the whole text around what was in the report and order there, the draft. I know I'm losing it because I'm Amici and I do these kinds of things when I'm live. Let's look at the renewals so far. So as you can see, we have 127 out of 153. So that means we have some applicants who are late. They're still kind of in the woods because they can still file. We're kind of in that grace period. Normally outside of the whole coronavirus thing, the FCC does give kind of a grace period on the filings for renewal. So if you don't file on the 1st, but you file on like the 15th or the 20th, you may still be okay. I don't know what the FCC is going to allow now that we have the coronavirus thing that's going to delay it even more. I figure if you can't get this, if you can't get your renewal in, and here's the thing is that again, if your station is clean as a whistle for the last license term, meaning that you've had no silent periods, you've had no notices of violation, no NALs, no fines, nothing like that. It's just a yes, 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 send it off and you're done kind of thing. So, there's no reason why these stations, are running late. And of course, now they're getting emails from the commission, and the emails are going to remind them. Now, of course, that also depends too on whether the email addresses in the FCC records are correct, which brings us yet to the other issue, and that is the conflict issues between LMS and CDBS. Right now, it is such a mess out there right now, and we're still having a lot of problems with LMS, and and obviously now with everything going on, that's gonna even delay getting a lot of issues fixed. Because right now, it gives me the impression that the FCC is kind of in this all hands on deck mode. All right, let's talk about the report and order again. I know we talked about it last week on a rant. I was in rant mode at the time because it was second look over, first real deep down look over. So yeah, I did get very, very excited and agitated last week when going through through the various things. But now that I've had a chill pill and such, we can now look at this in a more calmer environment. Directional antennas with proof of performance. This is an issue that I am taking back to the commission to try to get some relief on. Outside of the proposal, the original proposal for LP 250, which included an outer contour study, what we called a backstop, or outside of the use of using contours instead of distance separation for LPFMs to protect translators, there are really only two new reasons for LPFMs to use directional antennas, and that is for the few stations that are within 125 kilometers of Mexico, if they want to run more power in one direction and less than 50 in the direction of Mexico, similar to the rules that apply right now for FM translators, as well as the very rare cases, and especially in this interim policy that the FCC has put together for LPFMs in regards to Channel 6. We'll talk about Channel 6 in just a sec. But those rare cases where a LPFM station between 88.1 and 91.9, any station that's proposing operation in what's called the reserve band, to be able to use a directional antenna to protect themselves from a low-power TV Channel 6 or even a full power if they don't meet the minimum distance separation. The FCC pretty much gave carte blanche, as the NAB put it, for LPFM stations to use directional antennas. And actually, in most cases, it really is not really practical to use a directional antenna in LPFM in most cases because of the nature of the LPFM service. If you are using a directional antenna, you're making a great sacrifice on your service area. And what we normally use directional antennas right now for LPFM, the main reason we use them right now is for second adjacent channel waivers. In those cases where there's two issues that come up here. Number one is an issue where you're right on the edge of the service contour of your second adjacent station, and you use the directional antenna to stay completely outside of the service contour of that station, of that second adjacent short-spaced station. The other one is in very close by second adjacent situations where you use the directional characteristics of the antenna to keep that overlap zone, that zone where you're not supposed to have any population, to keep that away from a nearby residence or another occupied structure. I've used that many times in second adjacent channel situations, and have been very successful in using those. And the thing is that the second adjacent issue, there's already a recourse already. There's already rules in place that say that if there's interference, that the full power station that's the second adjacent can come back and say, hey, FCC, we're having problems. They need to shut down, do something different, whatever. That's already in place. And the reasoning why the FCC had come up with this idea of using proof of performance was that they said that because in all these other directional antenna reasons, there's no recourse by a full power station to claim interference. And like I told them, I said, look, LPFM stations are still going to have to meet minimum distance separations. The translator relief is off the table. At least with us for now, but for them it's off the table. And the LP250 with the backstop contour protection and using the LP100 distances or the LP10s like what was originally talked about even before that, gone. So there's no need for an LPFM. An LPFM station, other than the second adjacent and other than channel 6, is not protecting any specific facility. And we already have a process in place for second adjacent. If they want to require proof of performance on the case of protecting a channel 6, in those rare cases, those extremely rare cases, I'm good with that. But I don't want proof of performance requirements for second adjacent, nor do I want them for the Mexico thing, because what would happen in the Mexico thing, there is a recourse, and that is an objection from the Mexican government. And they could come back and say, oh yeah, okay, so even though they're 50 watts going this way, 100 watts going that way, we're still getting interference. And they could and they could file a complaint through the International Bureau and have some recourse. And again, this is no different than translators. Translators have this same 50 watt towards Mexico, 100 watt everywhere else thing. Full service doesn't have that. So, again, I'm trying to get rid of the proof of performance requirements because that can get very expensive in some cases. That means also having to hire someone to come out, to a surveyor, to attest to the installation. Now we know, I mean, like I said, these directional antennas are few and far between in LPFM. Unfortunately, the NAB made a spectacle out of it in the proceeding. And the commission staff misunderstood a lot of what I was saying. And we had several ex parte discussions on this, and they still didn't get it. I did talk to him at length about directional antennas yesterday, and I'm hoping that we could get some relief, at least for the second adjacent, and hopefully for the Mexico. And I'm saying, I don't see a reason to have directional antennas in all situations for LPFM. The only reason I could possibly see is this. 2 LPFM stations are 24 kilometers or maybe 25 kilometers apart. But because of terrain or some other issue, They're both interfering with each other despite the distance separation being good. Terrain could play a part of that. So one or both stations decide, we're going to go directional. We'll put a little bit of a directional aspect to it. We'll put a little bit of a null towards the two stations. Actually, you could do that right now and still stay non-directional. And the way you do it is by installing an antenna like a Nikon BKG77 and nulling it in the direction of the other LPFM. But both stations have similar antennas, similar side-mounted antennas like that. They could do that, and you could do that without having to go to the directional antenna, methods. So directional antennas, I feel like the whole issue got completely overblown, and especially with the contour protection methodologies off the table. There's no longer a need for it. There's no longer a need for the extended, more complex directional antenna issues. All I want to see is I want the ability to be able to use more than just the Scala antennas that are loaded in CDBS, and be able to specify other composite patterns, including like a standard off-the-shelf Nikon BKG77, as well as being able to do skewed scalas and things like that. We need that ability there. The way the rule is codified doesn't support it per se, and things are just very messed up right now with that. So we're trying to get the directional antenna issue cleared. This is something I will go to reconsideration on if necessary. This is a recon item. Alright, let's get back and look at here and see what we got here. Minor moves up to 11.2 kilometers. This was a total surprise for us, and actually it was a good surprise because we asked for 5. We said we didn't ask to change the 5.6. We specifically really didn't mention. All we said was if it's over 5.6, if they use a contour study, that they could show that it could still be moved. The FCC decided to go one easier and just say, okay, 11.2, which is what, 5.6 times 2. And then for anything over that, then you need a contour study to show that there's overlap between the old and the new. All right, so I'm good with that. I'm actually good with that. If you have any questions, feel free to post them in the chat. Hey, I did it right the first time. This time. Usually I do this, because that's what I'm seeing coming back to me. The screen is, I'm looking at myself right now in OBS Studios, so that kind of gives you an idea there. So if you have any questions, feel free to drop them in the chat. Next item up is codifying the cross-ownership of FM boosters. And, we have several boosters out there right now. There's 4 stations in Southern California, 1 in Washington State that have been authorized FM boosters. Boosters are a rare item for LPFM, but in some of these areas where there's really weird, hard terrain, they could be beneficial, especially if your LPFM station benefits from what we call the foothill effect, where your station has a very wide coverage contour in a particular direction, but because of other terrain, you're not able to reach those other areas. That's where the boosters are going in. That's where the boosters have been authorized for. Channel 6 protection. The FCC originally had proposed to eliminate all Channel 6 protection requirement, meaning any station from 88.1 to 91.9, regardless of whether it was a full service, LPFM, or a translator, would not have to protect Channel 6 TV stations, analog and digital. The idea was, first of all, analog television is going away in next year, summer of next year. But they proposed to delete all protection requirements. There was a last-minute objection that came from ABC and was supported by various other Channel 6 full-power TV stations. The FCC has deferred their decision on that. However, what they did do was they let LPFM go into an interim process to allow two things. Number one, if you want to use a reserve band channel and you're short space to it based on the current distance separations, you can contact the licensee of the channel 6 station, and if they give you consent, then you can have that separation requirement waived. Also, LPFMs will be allowed to use the contour overlap. We talked about this a little earlier. A contour overlap method to show that the LPFM station would not interfere with the channel 6 station. And this is similar. This is the same exact. Pretty much, it's the same exact policy that's being used right now for FM translators. So, we're proposing the same policy here. And this is one of the things I brought forward. I'm glad that the FCC was able to at least be able to entertain waivers on this. I wanted it codified, but that was, and then the FCC came out with this whole let's just get rid of channel 6 protections altogether. But they still left in an avenue that I can request a waiver based on the contours. So we got pretty much most of what we got what we wanted there, and then some. But overall, the whole broadcast community as a whole, kind of fell short on what the NPRM had. But the Channel 6 folks had to have their say, and honestly, there has not been a lot of research in the past 10 years done on this subject. NPR did some really good studies on this about 10 years ago. But with all the changes that are going on, and also too with the next gen TV, it may need to be looked at again. We talked about the FCC rejecting LP250 translator relief. We're going to talk about LP250 here in just a bit. EAS, I know there was a lot of discussion about EAS in this proceeding. It really kind of didn't, it was kind of thrown in there by the FCC. We weren't expecting to be involved in an EAS discussion. But we did talk about it, and we did talk about the various issues. But one thing that did come out of it was a clarification that EAS decoders that are in stations that are time-shared and they're co-located transmitters are allowed to share one EAS box. So if you have one transmitter, one EAS box. Simple as that. And that's actually a good thing. That resolves some of the issues. We had Portland had a station up there in that situation, and there were a couple other ones. And I know this is an issue that came up. John Brumel raised this issue to me at one time. So we got that. Also, too, one of the things I asked for was finally clarification that LPFM stations need to file a silent STA if they do go silent. We've got that now, and LPFM stations are required to file for silent. If they go for more than 10 days, silent notification. If they anticipate more than 30 days, STA. Remember, STAs expire in 6 months, so you have to renew it. And once this passes and once these rules are codified, there will be a grace period where if any stations right now that are currently silent and are still within the 1 year, you'll be able to file a silent retroactive back to the date that you actually did go silent, and there won't be any penalty for filing late, because you're supposed to file those within 10 days of the silent starting. So that's playing things by the rules there. Let's talk about LP250. Now, of course, we took a big hit in the LP250 in this last proceeding, and what the Federal Communications Commission was saying was that that we continue to believe that REC's proposal that the Commission establish new class of LPFM stations, LP250, conflicts with the LCRA, would complicate LPFM licensing, and is inconsistent with Congress's and the Commission's intent when establishing the LPFM service. The Commission has already taken action to improve LPFMs by allowing them for consent to rebroadcast their signals over FM translators. When I talked to Audio Division yesterday, I gave them a mouthful on the translator issue. And I said, listen, first of all, a translator is a second facility that's taking a separate frequency. And especially because LPFM has this contour overlap requirement between the translator and the primary station, what you're doing is you're actually putting duplicating signals on the air. And that is not spectrum efficient. Using a translator would be for a totally different situation than LP250. Using a translator would be to be able to concentrate a large signal over a large area outside of the LPFM's current service area, just right on the edge of it. Whereas LP250 extends the service contour out slightly, and especially in rural areas, brings in more of those rural areas, more of those surrounding areas around around the rural communities into the LPFM service area. Plus, it also increases the efficiency of the signal inside, the reliability of the signal inside the original 3-mile hyperlocal area. And that was the reasoning behind LP250. And I pretty much gave him the message that second of all, LPFM stations have not been able to apply for new translators since 2003. So right now, if an LPFM wanted a translator, the only choice that they have right now is to purchase the license of some other translator or to lease a translator. And remember that most of these translators that came out of Auction 83 originally started in the hands of Clark Parrish of Twin Falls, Idaho, who applied for tens of thousands of these translators during the 2003 window as non-commercial educational. And then he turned around and sold the granted construction permits that were not even built and racked up millions of dollars. REC did a lot of investigation in this in the mid-2000s. And we put out a lot of information on this in various proceedings. And we talked about the millions. We were tracking the applications and the assignments, and we had something we called a traffic report, where we were tracking the trafficking. Right now, that's the only way an LPFM station would be able to get on a translator. And I wanted a translator window for LPFM. I wanted it to be a part of the Auction 100 window, the last of the 2018 AM revitalization window. I wanted an option in there where LPFMs could file for a translator, and if there was no competing applications from the commercial side of the house, they'd be able to get it. And the FCC just totally blew me off on that one. This was Ajit Pai's baby, and he wanted to do things his way. The FCC basically talks about the 73-815 regime that we talked about, where we're using these shorter LP10 distances and using the interfering contour of the LPFM as a backstop to make sure that it doesn't cross into the protected contour of the full service station. Actually, I got an interesting. You hear me always talking about protected contours and interfering contours. Here's just a brief rundown of what each of these mean. The protected contour is the station's service area, and this is the area that's got to be protected. The interfering contours come from the proposed facility, and it's based on a decades-old formula that 50% of the receivers 10% of the time would receive this field strength in this area. And so the idea is that the interfering contour cannot overlap the protected contour, and that and the FCC uses different field strength measurements for co-channel first adjacent, second, and third adjacent, and then there's a separate field strength process that's used for intermediate frequency. But that's how it works. That's how the that's how contours work. So, with that said, the FCC goes into the R&O, and I'm at paragraph 39 in case you're following along. We find REC's revised proposal does not fully address our concerns, although the Commission has previously noted that the LCRA does not contain any language limiting LPFM power levels. See, the FCC still recognizing again that you can have a 250 watt service without it running astray of the LCRA. The LCRA prohibits the reduction of minimum distance separations between LPFM and full service stations. When Congress adopted the LCRA, Commission distance separation rules, which required greater spacing between higher powered stations, were in effect. REC has not shown how its proposal is consistent with the LCRA or with the concept that the spacings needed to protect against interference increase along with the station's power levels. REC still proposes to double power without any increase in spacing to the other stations. REC acknowledges the resulting decrease in the 20-kilometer buffer zone without showing how a reduced buffer zone would be consistent with the spacing requirements. We believe that an increase in power without a comparable increase in spacing is effectively a reduction in channel distance separation and therefore is inconsistent with the LCRA. The proposed use of contour overlap would also introduce an unnecessary level of complexity to LPFM licensing, requiring all LP250 applicants to prepare engineering studies, examining the relationship of their own contours to those of adjacent channel stations, a requirement that is inconsistent with the simple design of the LPFM service. The simplicity of LPFM licensing has worked well, facilitating filing of LPFM applications with acceptable engineering and proposals, and that the Commission can process expediently. Although as REC observes, the Commission has sometimes used contour overlap analysis to grant waivers to LPFM stations seeking short-spaced authorizations. Such actions differ significantly from REC's LP250 proposal, which would authorize an entire class of service on a regular non-waiver basis subject to the requirements that they undertake complex contour overlap studies. Okay, we got the message. Okay, and understand one thing about what REC had proposed in 11749. Let me give you what's going on. When the FCC first proposed LP250, it was in the fourth notice of proposed rulemaking. That was in 2012, right after the LCRA was passed. The FCC was getting ready to implement the rules, so they came up with the fourth notice of proposed rulemaking. In there, at the request of Amherst Alliance, which is pretty much wiped off the face of the earth and was never really a representative of LPFM in the first place, and the Catholic Radio Association, basically the EWTN folks, they wanted an LP250. And what Don and Nick over at Amherst, who were so tied on they had an agenda to keep the LP10 service. There was still never an LP10 license given, but they wanted to keep the LP10 service on the books. Keeping in mind that Don and the main thing, and keep in mind, I've been on the inside of Amherst. I know how they click. And really, I feel like what they wanted was They wanted to legitimize Part 15 radio. They wanted to legitimize Part 15 and pirate transmitters of 10 watts, 10 watt ERP or less. And that's what they were trying to preserve. The so-called micro radio service, as it was called back in 2000. And those who actually work with LPFM stations, REC, Prometheus Radio Project, Common Frequency, we all came back and said, we need to put LP250 wherever it can fit. So the three most authoritative voices in LPFM said this is what we need. Meanwhile, the one voice that was disguising themselves as a authoritative voice for LPFM but has never done a damn thing for an LPFM station is out there saying we want to redline these LP250 stations, keep them in deep rural areas, so that way we can have our LP10. FCC saw that as infighting between LPFM advocates, and they just threw in the towel. So this is what we're trying to fix here. By the way, feel free to drop comments in the comments or questions in the chat. So they proposed this concept where they were going to keep the same distance separation, but they were going to keep the same distance separation at LP250, but that's going to mean that the 20-kilometer buffer zone is going to get penetrated anywhere from like 5 to 9 kilometers because of the higher powered LPFM stations, but they wanted to keep the distance separations the same. That was proposed. And then, of course, the FCC, when they denied doing the 250 at that time, they didn't touch on this. They didn't touch on this buffer zone. Remember, they were the ones that came up with this, not us. So in RM11749, which was filed, I think, in 2015, we came back with the same methodology and said, okay, since it was good for the FCC back in 2012, we're going to propose it in 2015. And that's what we did with RM11749. Obviously, not much movement happened on RM11749. And then came the AM revitalization and the activities that were going on there. Then came the big 900 application informal objection filed by Prometheus et al. And with that, like I said at the time, while it was well-intentioned, it was timed poorly, because what that was really doing was that was really asking for reconsideration of the decisions that were made by the FCC a few years beforehand when they set all the ground rules down for the AM revitalization windows. REC came back with a plan to give more flexibility to LPFMs, especially in this environment of, with all these AM stations moving around and especially concentrating into the urban areas, causing this distance separation issue. We came up with two concepts. We rewrote the LP 250 idea to use a loophole, keeping in mind at this time we are still under the impression that, and this is based also too on language that was in the fourth notice, that the Section 3 minimum distance separation can't reduce the minimum distance separation language in the LCRA had to do with the numbers that were on file in 73807. We never got anything back then that said, 20-kilometer buffer zone. The actual formula is really what it is. So, So we decided, okay, let's do another loophole. Since it was the date that the LCRA was enacted, which was in 2011, January 2011, was signed by President Obama right after the holidays. And at that time, LP10 numbers were still on the books. So in RM11810, we got a little creative, and we said, okay, loophole time. Because the LP10 numbers were still enacted on the date of the act, let's do this. Let's change LPFM for 250 to a hybrid model where you would use contours like translators to protect other full service stations and other translators. But to full service stations, there's still a statutory requirement that certain minimum distance separations have to be kept, and those distance separations would be the LP10 different distances. This is somewhat similar to a full power rule called 73.215. So we called ours 73.815, and we called it the 73.815 regime. You were either licensed under the 73.807 or licensed under 73.815. This is very similar, again, to the way commercial is done. You're either to any station, you're either licensed by distance separation, or maybe to one short space station, you're licensed by contour. And that's how it works in commercial, sort of loosely. We were proposing the same thing here. Well, the FCC decided this, and so the FCC decided in the notice of proposed rulemaking, we're going to tentatively reject it because that whole 815 is too complicated. Going down to the LP10 levels is going to violate LCRA. Again, despite the fact that there's nothing in LCRA that manages distance separation, that manages power levels. Not at that time was it mentioned that there was a desire to keep the full 20-kilometer buffer zone. Buffer zone, the desire to keep the 20-kilometer buffer zone did not happen until this draft report and order. So we came in and we said, okay, screw the whole LP10 distances. Forget that. Let's do LP100, but we're going to still keep that outer contour, that outer interfering contour in place. And this is mainly to appease EMF, Educational Media Foundation, because of the whole foothill effect issue that we had and the whole debacle over Razor Cake Gorski Press, the station in Pasadena, California. So that's where this all came from. So now this leaves us to where we're at today. With everything that went on, I've decided that we need to intercede in this period, this last chance opportunity between the time that the draft report and order goes into circulation, which it did, and the time that they actually vote on it, which will either be on or before the commission's meeting. We're in this period right now. We can still talk about this with the commission up to 7 days before the meeting date. That's when the Sunshine Agenda comes out, and once the Sunshine Agenda is out, you can't discuss anything with any rulemaking, with any decision-making personnel at the FCC. So we're trying to use this pre-Sunshine time to try to get some changes here done, and doing some things at the last minute. And like I said, we pushed the audio division yesterday on this, and I've already got appointments lined up right now with Pi's person, as well as both commissioners in the minority. I'm still waiting to hear back from O'Reilly and from Carr. Now, just to give you an idea of what we are proposing, let's see. Oh, okay. This graphic shows the how the buffer zone is used. So, like for example, you'll see the blue circle is the protected contour of the full service station, and it's the standard, the standard based on that service class. So, like for example, for Class A station will be 28.3 kilometers. The buffer zone, which was put in place back in 2000, is a 20-kilometer protection zone around that standard distance. And then the LPFM's interfering contour standard distance again has to remain outside of that, outside of that buffer zone. They can't overlap. That's why the first example on the top shows current rules. What the FCC proposed in the fourth notice, and therefore what REC proposed in 11749, is the second is the middle there, where the LP 250 goes into the buffer zone. The way it does, like that, it goes into the buffer zone, but still does not reach the protected contour of the full service station. If this was a translator, that red ball, that red circle, can touch up right against the inner blue circle and still be legal. So what we've done is we proposed yesterday to the audio division that, hey, okay, we accept the fact that we do not, that the buffer zone needs to be there, the full 20-kilometer buffer zone. So let's respect the buffer zone. And so to do this and to simplify things, we take out the back end contour study. We're not going to need it as much as we did before because we're now going to be further away from full service stations as LP 250s. We're now going 5 to 9 kilometers back, and I'll show you the new proposed tables here in just a moment. But I mean, so basically, here's the last resort LP 250 that we put forward to the audio division yesterday. LP 250 is provided in the same manner exactly like an LP 100, meaning strictly distance separation. No contours, no backstops. Distance separations would be extended to honor the full 20-kilometer buffer zone. So basically, it's just an LP 100 at 250 with 250 distances. And then the issue came up about, what about having LP 250 in the original window? Because apparently the FCC the audio division kind of commented that if they're going to do this, they would want the LP 250 to be available at the time of the window. And I'm saying don't do it that way. Do it, everything as 100s to start with. Get the applications in, and then those stations that are eligible to upgrade can upgrade to 250. If you do it that way, it reduces the chance that applications will conflict and create what's called mutually exclusive or MX groups. And if there's MX groups, then that's going to reduce the number of possible stations that could, if they're stuck in these conflicts. So start them at 100 and then eventually have them work their way up. So we'll see if the FCC decides to move forward with this, if that's the way to do it. So if you look at this proposal, you will see that it addresses all the issues that I just read in that paragraph 39. It talked about that the LPFM is that we're making this non-complex and that we're respecting the 20-kilometer buffer zone. So this is the last resort on this go-around for LP 250. And of course, if they don't do it, we can always come back and recon with this. Otherwise, if this gets adopted without it, there's nothing stopping us from coming back later and trying again. And, of course, the problem with that is that the FCC would have a lot of reasons not to do it, claiming that we addressed it in 2012, we decided not to do it. We addressed it in 2020. Supposedly nothing changed since 2012 to 2020. And I'm saying no, that's, I totally disagreed with that notion, and I mentioned many things that have happened between 2012 and now to warrant us relooking at the LP 250 again. And if this goes belly up again, and we look at this again maybe in a year or two, maybe we'll have a different commission at the time. Maybe we'll have a different majority. Again, I don't get political here. but I just state facts that a different party in control could shape the decisions that the commission makes. And we could look at this again at that time and use this, and basically what's going on right now can have a bearing. Right now with the coronavirus, COVID-19, and the things that the stations are doing right now, and the stories that I'm hearing from stations that some of them are having performance issues, and they're really trying to reach people, and they can't get inside of buildings because of LP 100, where LP 250 would help. Maybe this is going to help us. So keep those stories written. We'll be asking for them eventually, maybe. But for right now, we're going to try to shoot with what we got. Now, getting the majority right now to recognize LPFM as something that is also a GOP friendly service, we'll say, is also a tough sell. And this is because of the history of the service. This is because there's this general impression within the conservative community that this LPFM was created by left-wing, pinko commie kinds of people, and it's this left-wing thing. Well, we've had some pretty interesting statistics coming out of this that, and I plan to use some of these statistics with the commissioners in the majority. And again, like I said, REC does not take any political stance, but we do use the political parties when, we need to show that what we're doing will benefit some of the items, the things that their party stands for. And I will do that with both. I will do that with the GOP side. I will do that with the Democratic side. And so we had come up with some, some very interesting, I'm trying to find them here, but we came up with some very interesting statistics here. And they're around here somewhere. Here we go. Came up with some LP 250. I can't display this right now, but it will be in the upcoming ex-parte presentations, and we'll post it then. But we did a lot of study based on upgradability in metro markets. We looked at the 6 segments. Remember all that 6 segment stuff? Well, this is where it's coming into play. We are using that data to show, for example, which communities, which types of stations would be upgradable. Keeping in mind that the upgradable stations are going to be favored much more towards the the rural and suburban areas than it is going to be the urban area. For example, we could tell you that of the faith-based organizations, 62% of them would be able to upgrade as a minor change, either same channel or adjacent channel. 19% would not be able to upgrade, would require a major change or a channel change with a showing of a reduced interference, and 19% would not be able to upgrade at all. Now, this is different than the secular organizations, where it's only a 56% minor change upgrade, and a 26 can't upgrade, and that's because of the fact that a lot of these secular LPFMs are located in more urbanized areas. We don't see a majority of stations that will be able to upgrade until we reach around market 76. So in the top 75 markets, it's pretty much, with some exceptions, pretty much more of the stations would be able to upgrade, will not be able to upgrade versus them being able to upgrade. We also looked at the various Christian networks that many of the LPFMs are carrying. The Christian networks, of course, are like your EWTN and Relevant for the Catholics, Life Talk 3ABN for the Seventh-day Adventists and such. And while we really don't feel that this is the most appropriate use of an LPFM station to carry a satellite network 24 hours a day. They do exist. They are licensed, and we must address them. And when we can come to the GOP side, to the majority, and say that 71% of these stations, 71% of these Christian satellite stations would be able to upgrade without on a minor change, and only 10% would not be able to upgrade at all. That's a number that I think the GOP wants to see. Because this is a rural and suburban service, unfortunately, the one place where it lacks a good take rate is going to be where it comes to racial diversity, because there are we've got about 50 stations or so that we've segmented under racial diverse groups, and unfortunately, because most of those stations are in urban areas, there's the upgrade rate in those segments are pretty low. However, of the tribal stations, which are more likely in rural area, we have a 90% minor change for upgrades, and 5%, or basically one station, that can't upgrade at all. So yeah, this will help tribal. This will definitely help tribal. Now I got the most interesting result that we have. We were able to get some additional data, county level data, and this is going to be an interesting one. And and for those of you, for those of you out there who are on the right side of the aisle, you might find this one interesting. If you're a Trump supporter, you'll find this one interesting. Again, like I said, I'm not taking a political stand here. But I will say this. Here's an interesting statistic I want you all to hear. Out of all the LPFM stations that are out there, 1,331 are physically located in counties that voted in the 2016 election for Donald Trump. 859 stations are located in counties that voted for Hillary Clinton. Okay, there's an interesting statistic that we were able to pull using some third-party election county data that we got, and melding that in with the existing LPFM data, and we were able to come up with these numbers. So here's the thing: for the stations that voted Republican in 2016, and this was. Keep in mind that, again, it's a lot of rural, a lot of flyover counties and such, not necessarily as much the urban area. 69% can upgrade on a minor, 11% can't upgrade at all. Whereas in the Democratic counties, which are mostly are concentrated more urban, you had 41% that can upgrade on a minor and 43% that can't upgrade at all. So you could see the differences there. You could see where LP250, this LP250 should be an easy sell to the majority. You would think it would be. But, so that's that was an interesting number. But, here's what the national numbers look like overall. Again, 38.6% would be able to upgrade on the same channel. 15.6 would be able to upgrade on the same channel, but they'll need a new second adjacent channel waiver. 4.2% can upgrade but they'll need to change channels, but it'll be a minor change. They may or may not need a second adjacent waiver. We didn't break it down that far in this. Another 18.5% can change, but they would require they wouldn't be on an adjacent channel, so either the FCC would have to follow the existing 73870A rule, which they have to show a showing of reduced interference, or the FCC may make an opportunity available for a major change to do it. We don't know, but 23% of the LPFM stations would not be able to upgrade at all under this plan. So, so we've got avenues for over half of the LPFM stations to be able to upgrade. And again, it's all based on location. It's all based on the crowding of the spectrum. And if you want to check individual stations, check.lp250.com has been recently updated with these new rules. So you can go ahead and check there. Yeah, well, I said stations that are physically located in counties that voted Republican. That's what I was trying to say. So meaning that, there's audiences out there, the audiences that they're trying to reach are and a lot of these are churches. A lot of these are your faith-based stations. Remember, we've got about a 50-50. It's about a 50-50 split. It's actually more like about a 53-47 split, favoring secular over faith-based. But still, faith-based segment, one of the 6 segments, has a huge piece of the pie. So, there's a lot in this for those who feel that those who support religious freedom, and for those who support the ability for churches for people to practice their religion and such. I feel that these are stats that I think I'm hoping may get the majority to consider taking this a little more seriously than some left-wing conspiracy or whatever they decide to call it. Anyway, these are the new distance separation numbers. And you'll see that under LP250, most of them go up about 5 kilometers. We see the B there goes up by 9. That's just because to LPFM we have to use a bigger interfering contour to the bigger interfering contour for the bigger service contour to the full service station. So you've got the 34 dB interfering going to the 54 dB service. It's that 20 dB difference, the infamous UD ratio there. And then Class C, you see there's a 6 kilometer difference. It's all because of rounding. We take the numbers about 4 decimal positions down, and then we add those up, and then we come up with the formula, and then the numbers are rounded. Then you can see the first adjacent numbers change. Pretty much everything except for B, except for the B's. I think that Class B number is wrong on there. I think that Class B number is wrong. I think it should be probably a little bit more than 90, than 99. Let's see, I've got it right here. First adjacent, Class B. Yeah, something there does not look right. Well, I got 99. Okay. But B1 is 74 or 77. So, yeah, okay. Yeah, when I look at the other thing, yeah, it makes sense. So, but those are the numbers. Those are the numbers we're proposing. Second adjacent's always been the way it is, even all the previous proposals going back to the 2012, because there is no buffer zone on second adjacent. There's no need for it. So, but those co-channels and first adjacents, those are the numbers that we're proposing. It's those higher numbers for LP250. LP100s would stay at the current numbers, but 250 would go to the new numbers. And that's how this all works. A lot of good information there, but this is what we're pushing. So right now, the status is that I've got 3 calls coming up right now. One with Pi's person, who I'm really good friends with, so I know that he'll always listen to me on such. I'm still waiting to hear back on from O'Reilly's person. I'm still waiting to hear back from Brendan Carr's person. I've already heard back from Starks and from Rosen Warsaw, the 2 Democratic members of the commission, and we're setting up times to meet this week and next week. So we'll be throwing the statistics around, and I'm hoping we could try to save this. And what I want to do is I just want to at least bring this in as a further notice of proposed rulemaking, so that way we have a full comment and reply period. So that way, Mr. Nab can raise some more stinks about why LPFM should not have good things. A couple nice things too is that one of the strategies that the NAB, or I call Mr. Nab, tried to do in this last proceeding was talking about all these nasty things that all these nasty rule violations that LPFM did over the years, and laundry listed them. And of course, I came back with a laundry list of full service violations. The FCC is like, we're just gonna, if NAB, irrelevant, blow that out of the water. I am so glad the commission blew the NAB out. The commission blew the NAB out of the water in many ways in this thing. So, we only got what we got right now because the NAB got blown out of the water. New Jersey Broadcasters Association also, too, who's also very vocal. Not wanting minor moves because they'll cause interference, even though the LPFM would still have to meet minimum separation. What's in the New Jersey water? What's in the New Jersey water that's so bad that they come up with this craziness? Anyway, any questions, any comments? Feel free to drop them in there. BJ Morris says, sounds like the history of Amherst should be a blog post, wink wink. I don't know if I want to go there. I've got a lot of the old documentation from Amherst. They were well intended. The problem is they came up with crazy ideas. Now remember that Nick Leggett and Don Shellhart were the same two people that created the RM 9208, which was one of the two petitions for rulemaking that became M Docket 9925, which was the building blocks for LPFM that we have today. So in some ways you can thank them for that, but keep in mind that they were pushing, when they came up with their original petition, they wanted 1 watt neighborhood radio stations. That's what they originally came in with, is 1 watt micro stations. In other words, they were trying to legalize Part 15 equipment and allowing Part 15 equipment to raise their powers. That's what this all started with. Hence, another reason why there were a lot of concerns, one of the many reasons why there were a lot of concerns at the time of pirate radio influence in LPFM, and why we have certified transmitters. And now with all the crap that's coming in from China right now, we need to keep that restriction in there, and I'm glad the FCC is upholding that and keeping that restriction in there. As long as this crap washes on our shores, and the FCC and the DOJ and the Federal Trade Commission don't do squat about it because they're too chicken shit to stand up to Amazon, we've got to have these restrictions in place. Plus also too, the certified transmitters do function better, and they do handle out of tolerance issues much better. They don't require a lot of hand holding like older hand-me-down broadcast equipment. So, all right, with that, if there's no other questions from the group, I think we'll call it. Thanks for watching. If you're still here, feel free to, if you have any questions or anything down the road, feel free to write us, lpfm@recnet.com. If you need anything done, feel free to let me know, and we'll get it done. We are still operating despite the coronavirus. And any help, any support, any donations you feel if any of this advice was worth anything to you, or anything that we talk about online is worth something to you, feel free to drop a donation at any time. There it is right there, paypal.me/recnet. All right, we'll see you possibly next week. Depends on if we have some reliable things to say. and some things that we need to say. And so, with that, have a good day, Ricky, and good night, John Wolfert, wherever you may be.